Wow, this new Star Wars Outlaws game looks pretty great.
That's pretty good.
You know what? Let's check out the official website and see if we can learn more about the... Good Lord, what is happening in there? Pre-order. Get 3 days early access. Pre-order. You want to pre-order the season's pass? And get 3 days early access. Pre-order. That's four pre-orders on one screen. Extend K's journey with 2 upcoming DLCs. You want to play the exclusive Jabba's Fuckhouse? Pre-order. Unlock exclusive cosmetic pre-order. Are you fucking pre-ordering yet? You know what's funny? If you go to the Arrowhead Games website and just look at it. There's something special about an Arrowhead game. Games should challenge the creativity of the individuals who play them. We want our games to help forge friendships. And look at that. Not even an advertisement for the Super Citizen Edition. I think this is a great way to illustrate what AAA gaming has become and what indie gaming has evolved into. The difference in priorities is clear, and you might assume, Actman, that's just typical Ubisoft greed and shenanigans. But you're wrong. It's worse than that. What Ubisoft is doing with Star Wars Outlaws is symptomatic of a much greater issue plaguing all of AAA gaming. Recently, Ubisoft dropped a story trailer for Outlaws. I watched it, and I felt apathy. As you know,
apathy is death.
The gameplay reveal for Outlaws looked solid, but now I'm skeptical. Maybe it was the boring writing, the generic presentation, or the fact that they're directing people towards the $120 version of the game instead of the standard version.
Hello, I like money.
Still, I don't remember the last time I felt indifferent to a new Star Wars game. On the flip side, one of my buddies sent me a trailer for a game called Kingmakers. I've never heard of this franchise nor the studio behind it, but let's check it out. What the fuck is this? Oh my god! This is a fucking Chevy truck in the... Oh, we're giving shotguns? How can the engine handle this many guys on screen? This is like Mountain Blade plus Dynasty Warriors with time travel? And grenades? Oh my god, and they have RTS mechanics? No shot. It can't get any crazy. And helicopters too? Here's the question of the day. Why, as a huge Star Wars fan, am I more excited for this and not this? Well, the answer is obvious. It's Ubisoft. But like I said, AAA gaming has been in decline for some time. Meanwhile, indie games have become a spawning pool for creativity and imagination. You may have seen the plethora of AAA gaming is dead videos spring up on YouTube. Well, AAA gaming didn't just die, it was murdered. If you got that reference, welcome back to 2017 YouTube. Clearly, I'm not the only one who has felt disillusioned and apathetic towards recent AAA titles. But a lot of people focus on how AAA games have gotten worse. They highlight the obvious: excessive monetization, unfinished products being released. I can't masturbate to this character. And while these are all issues worth pointing out, we need to understand why these things are happening. The bigger picture. You see, the reality is AAA games have become far too safe, formulaic, predictable, and just unexciting. Perhaps it's because you're an old jaded nerd, Actman. No, that couldn't possibly be it.
Am I so out of touch? No, it's the children who are wrong.
That's what we're going to explore today. The decline of AAA gaming and the rise of indie. Why has AAA gaming gotten so bad? Now, first off, what the fuck does AAA actually mean? The Advanced Aardvark Association? Because I'd love to join that club. No, instead you should join my public Discord server, the Act Clan. Links in the pinned comment and in the little card up here. But the acronym originally referred to large budget, high profile games developed by reputable studios released by major publishers. You know, Halo, Call of Duty, Warcraft, The Witcher, 50 Cent Bulletproof, Cory in the House. Games that would shake the very foundation of the world. AAA games typically have large teams, expensive marketing campaigns, and copious amounts of funding. The term was taken from the credit industry and applied to gaming once the severely obese corporate fat cats realized video games weren't a joke of a business and could actually make more money than Hollywood. For business moguls, AAA meant this is the safest investment you can make to get a return. That's not the case anymore. Today, AAA mostly indicates the aspirations and cost of a game, not how safe an investment it is. From the 80s to the 2000s, there weren't many games that were commercial failures. It was mostly like failed consoles. And that's a good video to watch. But since the 2010s, as AAA gaming budgets have grown exponentially, we've seen some big-ass flops. Marvel's Avengers, Suicide Squad, Anthem, Redfall, Aliens Colonial Marines. And in the last 7 or so years, it also seems like many popular franchises have released what fans consider to be the worst entry in said franchise. Fallout 76, Battlefield 2042, Mass Effect Andromeda. Maybe this is all just a coincidence.
But as one trained in the Force, you know that true coincidences are rare.
So what gives? Why have things changed? Well, one of the driving factors behind the decline of AAA games is they've gotten too big. The pants do not fit anymore. For reference, vanilla World of Warcraft was made by a team of about 40 people. Helldivers 2 was made by a team of 100. Over 9,000 people contributed to Diablo 4.
What, 9,000?
Starfield, 7 years in development, $200 million budget, 1,700 planets to explore. Todd, you think maybe we could tone that number of planets down to like 30 or maybe 10? 10 really good planets?
The gamers desire 1,700 planets.
AAA games have exploded in size, scope, and cost to an unprecedented level. On one hand, a larger team has the potential to create something truly incredible, revolutionary, to realize their greatest ambitions. But this relies on having a cohesive vision amongst many people and the budget and resources to make it happen. However, the more ambitious a project, the more money invested into it, the riskier it becomes. Immortals of Avium, a game you probably never heard of, was the debut title for Ascendant Studios. And for some inexplicable reason, the game was given a budget of 125 million smackaroos, making it one of the most expensive video games ever made. What the fuck? Immortals sold poorly, and Ascendant, after releasing their first title, had to lay off almost half of their staff. 6 months later, the remaining employees were furloughed, a fancy word for, maybe you have a job, IDK? And the company's future is uncertain. Sometimes memes can spit truth. I want shorter games with worse graphics made by people who are paid more to work less, and I'm not kidding. Immortals of Avium is a mistake that shouldn't have happened. And it's the exact type of reason why AAA publishers are sticking with familiar IPs and playing it safe. You guys excited for Call of Duty 26 to come out later this year? The bigger they are, the harder they fall. But why was Immortals, this random game, bloated with such a ridiculous budget and high expectations? Well, COVID-19 changed a lot of things. People bought a shitload of video games during that time, and some upper management folk adjusted their business. They saw this as an opportunity to invest. So they expanded operations, hired more employees, but of course, the video game sales caused by the pandemic didn't last. And we're now seeing the fallout of that overexpansion. Fallout New Vegas. 10,000 layoffs in 2023 and 8,000 more on the way. Over 30 studios were shut down, several games canceled. The hubris from corporate overlords has uprooted this industry in such terrible ways. Overloading teams with talented employees and a shit zillion dollars isn't some magical recipe for success. In fact, it puts the studio in a much more dire, stressful position, because if the game doesn't sell well, they're fucked. Blockbuster game development costs are out of control. According to a study by the CMA, a single AAA game could have development costs between $90 to $180 million, plus $50 to $150 million for marketing. That Suicide Squad game that 200 people are playing? Probably had an inflated budget. This is clearly unsustainable. It's like every major AAA game is some massive live or die gamble. Naturally, companies want to mitigate and avoid all the risk they can. So, again, they rely on established IPs and stick with what's familiar, and most of all, safe. So wait a minute, Ackman. You're telling me AAA games have become a greater risk, but also safer?
That's a paradox, John.
Think about it this way. The bigger the budget, the more employees working on a game, the more copies it needs to sell. Therefore, it has to appeal to a lower common denominator. They have to simplify and dumb down something. They cannot take risks or experiment. They have to stick with what has proven to work. This is a huge reason why indie games such as Helldivers 2, Hades, Lethal Company are so much better at innovating on a popular formula or giving us something brand new. Which would you rather play, Back 4 Blood or Deep Rock Galactic? I better see some fucking rock and stone in the comments. But that's the thing, Back 4 Blood is a cheap imitation of what inspired it, while Deep Rock Galactic is a unique twist on the whole four dumbasses trying to accomplish something co-op game. Deep Rock is brimming with charm, style, and this is gonna sound cheesy as fuck, but you can feel the love that went into it. I can't say the same with Back 4 Blood. What are some other examples that illustrate how games have gotten safe? Well, let me ask you this. Did you think for 1 millisecond that the Modern Warfare 3 remake was going to do the no Russian scene justice? Did you think it was gonna be as shocking, if not more so?
No!
You terrorist.
No!
You look like one.
Woo! Oh, give the writers a raise. Of course not. Like, even Call of Duty feels like it's been sterilized, but of course there's some exceptions with like Cold War. I mean, that game took some serious risks with its campaign and story, and it paid off. Gamers love being surprised. We love being thrown for a loop, because it's so hard to do now in the age of the internet and with all these leaks and everything. This is why Helldivers 2's live service is retaining so many players, because there haven't been any roadmaps going into excruciating detail about what to expect. It's why the redemption of No Man's Sky hit so hard, because Sean and Hello Games just went into hibernation and came out when they had something to show people. When I say safe, I'm not just talking about the lack of innovation with game design, but also the writing. AAA franchises that used to go really hard with the dialogue now feel tame, like they're pulling punches. I'm not a huge expert on Fallout, so Fallout fans, please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But there is a massive difference between Bethesda's Fallout games and the other Fallout games. In New Vegas, you can literally sell drugs to children. Like that's a real choice you have in the game. You can be an absolute maniac. You can shake down a guy for caps and he'll say, well, you've taken everything but the clothes off my back. And then you can say, actually, give me your fucking clothes too. You know what I mean? Like, for some reason, I just can't picture these types of things being in a new Fallout game. KOTOR 2 is also a fantastic example, because I doubt we'll ever see a Star Wars game that takes the franchise in such a bold direction. KOTOR 2 is a Star Wars game where the main villain wants to kill the Force, destroy the Force, like remove it from the universe, destroy the concept of Sith and Jedi completely. There's no way in Nar Shaddaa we'd ever witness a Star Wars game that delves into that sort of thing. According to Obsidian, Chris Avallone, one of the main writers for New Vegas and KOTOR 2, Obsidian made multiple proposals to develop spin-offs for Fallout and the Elder Scrolls, all of which were turned down by Bethesda. And while we can only imagine the reason why, perhaps it was too risky in their eyes. Here's another example, Halo Wars 2. Console RTS, pretty niche, but its expansion, Awakening the Nightmare, was the first time in a decade we saw the Flood in a Halo game. Why haven't the Flood appeared in the main series? Don't want to risk lowering the sales with an M rating, right? M-rated games don't sell too great, do they? Speaking of Rockstar, God, this industry pisses me off sometimes. LA Noire 2, where is it? Bully 2? And you might think, well, isn't that hypocritical, Ackman? You were just complaining about these companies sticking to established IPs. But both of these franchises only have one game. And that's kind of my point. Instead of making one, $400 million game, why not cut a chunk of that out and develop multiple AA games?
What if they took one of these $150 million AAA budgets and made a couple of $20 million bets with them, right? And just funded a bunch of projects, and the risk is much smaller. And I think that would be very good for the industry. And I wish AAA would take more risks like that with smaller teams. And you would get that cohesion. You would get that sort of singular vision, I think, and stronger creativity out of it.
I at least understand this for Rockstar, because their games are so overhyped. If they released a sequel that you thought was a 9 out of 10, that would feel disappointing. A bunch of Halo spin-offs were also pitched to leadership at 343, including an ODST-themed game similar to Helldivers 2. Imagine what could have been. I guess I just don't understand why the corporate side of game development treats every title like it has to be an all-in bet. Do you see what I'm getting at? So many of our favorite franchises that we grew to love because of how bold they were are now playing it safe. And that's why indie and AA gaming is thriving right now, because they can take risks. They're not obsessing over how many people are gonna buy the game. The developers of Palworld were like, well, hope this doesn't make us go bankrupt. Indie studios are operating at the level that AAA used to. And when you don't have to make hundreds of millions of dollars to keep your company afloat and not fire your entire studio, you can take risks. And going back to my initial comparison between Arrowhead and Ubisoft, there's a huge difference in the mission statements of AAA and indie games. Baldur's Gate 3 is an indie game. Larian is an independent studio, but the quality is so amazing, you'd assume it's AAA, right? There's this trend of indie developers reassuring customers that they're not gonna nickel and dime us. No, there are no in-game purchases in our game. We believe in providing a complete and immersive gaming experience without the need for additional purchases. Vermintide 2 is one of the only games to do loot boxes right, because they didn't sell them. At the height of the loot box craze, no less. Helldivers 2 doesn't let you pay for tiers in the Freedom Passes. Indie developers can afford to be more player-friendly because they don't have these investors hanging over their heads and these massive budgets. You might think all these egregious microtransactions is just pure corporate greed, and there's a good chance some of it is, but it's also a safeguard, like a necessity. And I think the solution is just to make games smaller, dude. Now, a really shitty byproduct of this risk-averse mentality is that a lot of these publishers are looking for a quick buck. They want to make easy money, so what do? Bingo! Flood the market with shitty remasters. Boy, there's been an abundance of these lately. The Last of Us 1 on PC, GTA Trilogy.
Oh shit, here we go again.
Hell, even Dark Souls Remastered sucked major ass. And don't even get me started on the fucking Battlefront collection. Did you know that at one point Warcraft 3 Reforged had like 3 people working on it? Like one guy was supposed to remake all of the cutscenes? And this is so perplexing. These studios dump 10 figures into a new game but can't even hire 10 people to make a decent remaster. It's like there's no middle ground. It's either no budget or dump the bank account. Meanwhile, Lethal Company, made by one guy. Now, because studios are investing so much, they tend to interfere with the creative process to insane degrees. They see trends that are making money elsewhere, and they think, well, let's just throw that into our game. I'm funding this. What I say goes. Redfall lost 70% of its Arcane staff during development, struggled the whole way. Development of Redfall began in 2018 as parent ZeniMax was quietly looking to sell itself and was encouraging its studios to create games as a service projects like Overwatch. Microtransactions were intensely encouraged. However, the problems in trying to develop Redfall surfaced early. Firstly, management kept offering conflicting visions of what the game would and should be, resulting in developer confusion about what they were creating. How to reconcile single-player and multiplayer within an Arcane game was never really resolved either. Secondly, Arcane employed fewer than 100 people, which had been enough to make a single-player game, but was not a healthy number for developing a large multiplayer game with microtransactions to manage. Outsourcing work to other studios was reportedly not enough to alleviate the strain. As a result of plummeting morale and lack of direction, veteran employees left the company in droves, with about 70% of the staff ultimately leaving Arcane. Redfall is not the only story of its kind. You can look at most AAA flops or AAA games that severely disappointed, and you'll find something similar. Management interfered. Management wanted this. I imagine they feel they have to micromanage these things, again because of the investment. Sometimes with AAA games, it feels like there's too many cooks in the kitchen, and Gordon Ramsay is pissed.
What are you? An idiot sandwich.
There's gotta be a happy middle ground in dev team size. Too small and you feel like the world rests on your shoulders. Too big and you feel like you have zero agency and influence. These big dev teams, especially when they're spread out against multiple studios across the country, can sometimes have very inefficient communication, bureaucracy. Next Battlefield has the largest development team so far. 1 year later, former DICE dev says 2042 never stood much chance being great at launch. There's a video by Timothy Kane, the creator of the original Fallout, about game development caution. And he talks about how certain things in game development now that could be fixed in 45 minutes now take 4 weeks.
When we were making the Outer Worlds, the combat AI wasn't really in yet, so I asked for a very simple combat aggression code to be added. This is how simple it was. Every time an NPC got shot, they would see if that person was on the list of someone who'd shot them. If they weren't, they'd add them to the list with the amount of damage they just took. If they were already on the list, they'd just add the amount of damage they took. Whenever they're deciding who to attack, they attack the person at the top of the list. That's it. That's all I wanted. The programmer who it got signed to came to me and said, I need 4 weeks. And I'm like, why? Walk me through what you're going to do. And he goes, you don't understand. And I was like, I've coded this 3 times. Walk me through it. And he wouldn't. He left. He left angry. Lead programmer came back, started yelling at me, saying, if he says he needs 4 weeks, he needs 4 weeks. And I'm like, then I will do it. I'll have it done before lunch. And he said, no, because then people will have to support your code. I'm like, I'm going to walk you through what I want. And you tell me why this takes 4 weeks. He looked at what I wrote, which was about 10 lines of pseudocode on a whiteboard. And he goes, I'll come back. He came back about an hour later and said, what about 2 weeks? And I said, do I have any options here? Fine. 2 weeks.
You want to fix these lines of code? That decision has to go through 10 fucking departments now. It needs to be approved by your manager, by your manager's manager. It has to go through the marketing team, the DEI office. The fucking janitor's cousin has to approve it. Indie developers don't have the same level of bureaucracy. I imagine if there's a problem with the code, you could just walk over to the cubicle of Jimbo and ask him about it without the fucking HR department breathing down your neck. And you also have to make games that can be released in China. You need that China money. It has to hit certain quotas and scores on diversity, equity, and inclusion to secure funding. And the game needs to have microtransactions for this consistent revenue source, a live service business model, so that makes the investors happy. And can you see how creativity dies in this environment when games are made by committee and not creativity? It also seems like the more employees a company has, the easier it is for you to blend in and not be seen or heard. Indie studios typically have better working conditions with flexible hours. Employees have more creative control. Smaller teams allow the individual to have more influence on a game and a greater impact. I've seen a lot of articles from ex-developers who say, this game wasn't what we intended to make. It wasn't what we envisioned. Disagreements are going to spring up in game development, but it's easier to settle an argument between 2 people than it is 100. At the end of the day, indie gaming has risen where AAA has fallen. The decline of AAA gaming is due to the insane budgets, scope, and expectations of these games. How that affects the employees, the work environment, the investors and higher-ups who have to constantly micromanage these games and throw in their own ideas when they have no fucking clue what makes a good video game. I feel like a lot of these developers simply don't have the same luxuries and freedom to create art like they used to. Game development in the AAA space is now a committee process where simple solutions to bugs can take weeks, where the freedom to express and create art and take risks is suppressed in favor of creating the generic and the safe. Too many external factors have disrupted what used to be a creative process with the singular goal of making the best and most fun video game possible. It ain't about that no more. This shit has to make money, and a lot of it. And it's for all these reasons that AAA gaming is declining, and why indie titles are thriving. But what do you think? What are some of your favorite indie games? Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Don't forget to join my public Discord server. Links in the pinned comment and the description. Thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like if you did, and subscribe to the Act Man for more awesome content. Alright everyone, that's all I got for today. This is the Act Man signing out. Peace!